When I decided to create Publisher Spotlight, I knew exactly where I wanted to start. Zev Shlasinger is our first spotlight for a reason. His story is woven through decades of games and the people who play them. Throughout his career, Zev has established bringing memorable games to the table while building relationships with designers, publishers, and players across the industry. But Publisher Spotlight is about more than a list of games. It is about the people behind them, the decisions they made, the lessons they've learned, and the impact they have had on our hobby. Over this series, we will explore Zev's journey, stories behind the game, and discover what continues to inspire him today. My name is Jonathan. This is Geek My Games, and welcome to Publisher Spotlight number 1, Zev Shlasinger.
Thank you so much, Zev, for joining us today. Today is going to be really kind of more of a relaxed feel. I really wanted to kind of sit down and ask you some questions, kind of learn a little bit about your history. I do want to let you know I did get to see your recent interview with Neon Gorilla, and definitely look some of your history up there. So I'm not going to try to rehash all that. I thought they did a great job. I don't want to kind of ask you the same questions and want to bore you. I've had a couple friends of mine who's done the movie circuits, and they've had to have all those questions asked, the same ones over and over again. So I just want to kind of skip all that for you.
If I did it as many times as they did it, I could see it. But this would be like the second time in a short time. And so it's not boring, but ask whatever you want. That is fine.
Sure. I appreciate it. Rather than revisit all the same topics, I would love to spend getting to know the person behind Play to Z, hearing some of your stories that have shaped your journey, and really kind of get to know you.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
I think our audience really kind of enjoys getting to know the people behind the games that we love. Let's start really open. Let's have an open space here. For those who may know your games but haven't seen some of these videos, or who may not know your story, who is Zev?
Zev is a gamer. Been most of my life. I would say probably since 8 years old or so. Played all the classic games, of course, Monopoly, Life, Anti-Monopoly, actually. I played Careers, which is actually one of my favorite of the old school type games. I played Stratego also when I was 8, and I was really good at it. I really enjoyed it.
That was a favorite of mine. I loved Stratego.
I loved it. I played when I played it. I think I played 20 or 30 games, and I won every game. It's like I figured out how to protect my flag and all that, and it was so exciting. Then I graduated to Risk, and then from Risk I went to Axis and Allies. So I love Axis and Allies, one of my favorite games. Of course, I've done RPG. I mean, I did when I was 12. I learned Dungeons and Dragons. This was like first edition. I remember a friend of mine took me over. We lived in a big, like a housing project kind of thing. There were like 40 buildings in the project. One building over, my friend took me, said, "Hey, come on, we're gonna play this game." And I'm like, "Okay, hey, what is it? A board game? No, not a board game. Card game? No, not a card game." He goes, "Oh, you'll see when you get there." I had no idea what it was going to be, but yeah, I did fall in love with it. When we played it, I remember having a lot of fun, and it was crazy and all that. It was a great time. So yeah, I grew up playing games and everything, and on and off. At college I was part of the science fiction club, and we played Starfleet Battles. That was one game that we played a lot of back then, and we did some one-shot role-playing stuff as well. So I was gaming on and off. I'd be in D&D campaigns, on and off, and some, but nothing major. Like I never had a group that lasted years and years. Like I hear my friends, I'm kind of jealous of that. But I played one RPG campaign that probably lasted a few months, and then I think I ran one. It was actually a first edition campaign that I changed to second edition, changed all the stats and everything, and rewrote the whole thing. We ran that, and then once it was done, we were done. So I didn't get back into gaming really full time until Magic the Gathering in '94, and it was because I wanted a role play. I actually drove to New Jersey. I lived in New York, in Brooklyn. I drove to New Jersey to this game store to participate in an RPG campaign, and it's like an hour drive. I had gone a little bit before, generated my character, then I went the second time, and we were going to start, and the DM did not show. So I'm sitting there. There's like no one in the store except the owner and the guy that Norm, from Cheers, the guy that's always hanging out at the thing. This guy always hung out at the store. And they said, "Well, you're here. Do you want to learn this game?" And they taught me Magic the Gathering, and I fell in love with it and had a great time. And I think that was my journey more into gaming because I started going to conventions because of that. Before that, my only convention was, I think in 1983, I went to a Creation Comics convention. I had a great time, but that was like a multimedia convention, mostly comics, of course. but I met people like Ray Harryhausen. I had autographs by Harlan Ellison and Isaac Asimov. So yeah, it was awesome back then. I am old.
I'm a huge Asimov fan. I will say it is Arthur C. Clarke, Asimov, Heinlein to me. Just want to make sure I say that out
Oh,
to the
very
viewers.
nice, very nice. It's hard for me to tell because I've gone back and forth, but Asimov was definitely a big name for me, and I liked Ellison. Ellison was edgy and stuff. I had like an old paperback trilogy of the Foundation trilogy, and I believe I had him sign. Isaac Asimov signed all 3 books. Unfortunately, all those books got rotted, and I had Rabbit, and Rabbit ate some of it, and mold, and it was like, too bad. I don't have any of that stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, I started going to conventions. I got into a group where we demonstrated collectible card games. I was also a Magic judge for a while. I was one of the first Pro Tour judges. New York '96. I was a Magic judge back then. Yeah, so I did a lot of CCGs. I used to have my white box of card decks and pull out, hey, what do you want to play? The Guardians, this, Dark Ages, Magic, Middle Earth card game. So basically the glut of '95. I tried a lot of those games. Heresy, but my favorite was Shadow Fist, and that's what got me started on the journey to Z-Man. So what happened was the company went out of business in '97, and I was still demonstrating card games, but I was playing Shadow Fist in the evenings with a friend of mine. Every show we went to, people would come up to us and say, hey, I didn't know somebody had Shadow Fist here. I would have brought my deck. So this is about 1998. I turned to my friend and I said, maybe we should bring this game back. Mind you, I had no education. I had no business degree, no business classes. I was an English major.
What was your degree at school when you went to college? What was your degree?
English. I had a bachelor's in English and a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing.
My mom would have loved you. My mom.
Yeah, it was wild. And and that's it. So really, I started Z-Man Games in 1999 because of Shadow Fist, and in 2000 we premiered the first starter and booster expansion for Shadow Fist.
Wow.
And that's from there I did Z-Man 4. I sold it in, I don't know how much you want me to skip, but so I'm giving the general.
Keep going, man. Keep going.
I'm just doing the general. So I sold the company in 2011, but I worked for them for about 4.5 years. I did pretty much all of it myself. Yes, I outsourced art and graphic design and all that, but I was the only employee of Z-Man. I did all invoicing and sales and calls and going to shows and, doing the getting products for market, doing production, logistics. So the offer to buy the company was appealing because then I would just focus on what I really liked, which was finding games, and bringing them to market. So I worked for them for 4.5 years. And then in 2016, I was let go. 2 weeks later, I started my tenure at WizKids. I worked for them for 7 years, built up their catalog of games, and then let go in 23. And then about 5 months later, I started Play to Z. And now we're almost 3 years. So late September, October will be 3 years for Play to Z. And we currently have, I think, 13 games out, although a couple are out of stock, actually, or maybe went out of print at this point, with about 4 more coming before the end of the year.
Wow. Okay.
So
and we're going to talk about some of those.
Overview journey of it.
And we definitely want to talk about those. But before we do, I have to ask. So, you've talked about loving careers as a kid, and then we get to Shadow Fist, right? Walk me through. Those are 2 completely different games, right? When you look back now, what do you think those 2 games had in common that resonated so deeply with you?
I would say careers. So I think it was a product of the time that I learned it. It was different than what was there, right? It was a roll and move game, but it had a secret goal. It had spurs off the track, so you can get off the main track, take a spur, and some of them were they would give you a lot in I don't know if you want to call it resources, but if I remember correctly, it was like fame and heart. Those were the things that your secret goal, where you determine how many of each you'd have, and the spurs focus on a particular thing there. But I think you could also lose a lot and other things while there too. So I thought that was just cool. It was just very, very different, which of course was very different than Stratego at the time, right? Stratego was just unlike anything I had played, no roll and move. It was so different. And then playing Risk was again so crazy and had a dice rolling and the back and forth of that game. Yeah, so I wouldn't compare, Shadow Fist to that. Careers was a product of the time, of which when I was young, that's what I enjoyed. Would I enjoy it now? I mean, I probably would. If I had a choice, I would probably play it because I haven't played it in a while. Don't know how much I would enjoy it now. Nostalgia might color my feelings for it.
You got to be careful about that, man. You don't want to lose. You don't want to.
Copy. I found when they redid a copy, I actually bought one and just to have it. But you know what? I never broke it out. So it's I would love to play it, but I just never did.
That's a journey, right, that you're talking about there. And So I was curious, who shaped you into the person you are today? Who do you look back to in terms of your experience and your role through this? Like, who were the mentors, right, that walked you through this, or were you just like walking through this field by yourself and like really like kind of struggle? Because you got into the game fairly early, right?
Good question. I would say honestly, I think it was just me. It was just my decisions, my interests. They were just there. I mean, look, I was reading, science fiction and fantasy books when I was, 11 and 12 and stuff. I read Lord of the Rings when I was 12, and I was different than all the other people that I hung out with. Now, I also did a lot of sports. I played football, I played baseball. Pretty much almost any ball sport I played in some form. In, growing up in Brooklyn and stuff, we had a field or a big yard in this complex. We had a basketball court and things like that. So I was the jock as well, but I loved the reading and I did that. And I loved the gaming. I loved hanging out with friends and we would play these games and we play and also with my family. I played Monopoly with my family, my brother, sister, father sometimes. So I don't think anybody pushed me into it. It was just something I discovered on my own, and then I just kept going with it, and I was eager to learn. Again, when I joined the science fiction club, they're like, "Hey, you want to try this game?" And it was Starfleet Battles. I'm like, "Okay, sure." And I was like, "Yeah, this is great. I loved it. Let's keep playing it." I had fun with that too. That was a crazy game, but that was amazing. And we played with plotted movement, not free movement.
Yeah.
So we did the hardcore. Actually, at one point, when I left college at the time, I still wanted to play, but I couldn't. We couldn't get together. I actually played over the phone with a friend of mine. So we played by phone, which I don't think anybody else has really done. We would call each other and say, "Are you ready? You made all your deployments?" He goes, "Yes." And then I go, "No, give me a few more minutes." So we'd hang up. And I think this was at a time when you paid like per minute at times for phone calls and stuff like that. There was, it wasn't an easy, unlimited calls or something, a landline. Then we would call and then we would just, run through the impulse chart and make movement. And we trusted each other on die rolls when we had to roll for combat and effects and things like that. So that was a lot of fun. We did that for a few times to finish a particular campaign. So that was a lot of fun.
Wow.
But yeah, it was just I just discovered the stuff really.
All right. So you talked about like how you were really kind of a one man show. You were doing everything right at Z-Man, trying to put it all together. And then you were kind enough to talk with me, the Wednesday night at Origins, a few weeks ago, and I really I thought about that conversation quite a bit, especially after I realized who I was talking to, right? Because then I'm like, oh, like I was like red when I figured it out. Like I looked you up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to this guy. And so I was curious, when people do meet you at conventions, what do you think they usually misunderstand about you?
I would probably say in the beginning that that I probably had a whole team working with me and stuff like that. I that's why I kind of lately I've been stressing because people are not understanding the work. I was very transparent. Like I go on BGG way back when on Board Game Geek when people said, "Hey, why don't publishers do this or why don't publishers do that and why is the price like this?" And I would try to come in and give them the dose of reality and say, "Hey, look, this is what it is," kind of thing. And I would explain, economics and print runs and things like that. But I would also talk about, hey, because you need someone who needs to call to talk to distributors, to retailers. You need people who want to do marketing. Back then, it was marketing very, very different. People go to shows, people that. So just that it's a lot of work. It's not easy to do. And I think that might be it. But I don't know. But because I think I've been transparent and stuff, so I don't know if there has been any misconception otherwise. Because I don't hide anything really. I'm pretty open when people ask me things or whatnot. So I don't see that. I think it's just more, like you said, maybe people feel that, why isn't stuff done the way they feel it should be done, not realizing how small a lot of publishers are. Again, not just me, right? There are many people that have one or two people doing or three people doing everything, and it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff to do. And I think maybe just getting that scope in people's head to make them understand that some things are going to fall by the wayside and by accident, not out of malicious intent or anything. It's just that, oops, someone comes to me, they go, "Hey, you didn't update the website with this information." "Oh, yeah, you're right." Why? Because I'm the guy that has to do it, and I didn't get to it yet, or I forgot about it because I'm doing 30 other things. So I have to say, okay, today is website day, or like this hour is website hour, and I'm going to just concentrate, make what I need to do on the website, and then go on there. So sometimes I have to get reminded. I go, oh, there's an error on my website, or there's an omission. Okay, let me find the time, go back, fix it, next, Back then, I was using, for the Z-Man side, I was using Dreamscape, and I self-taught myself Dreamscape. I had the book and everything, and somebody created the template. That I couldn't do, the design, the look of it, but I put in all the information, right? And whatever information, like I didn't know how to do, I would find it on another site, and I would try to use to learn the code and copy the code, but modify it to work with my website. Usually, like if there was a web form or something, it's like I didn't know how to do a web form, and I looked it up in the Dreamweaver book. Okay, let me see how someone else does it. Oh, okay, yeah. So I had to learn all that as well. Yeah, so it's just all that learning stuff. And again, it's just me, and I have to find the time to do the thing that needs the most priority at the time.
I mean, I do think that I can definitely empathize with that on this end, right? So I can only imagine what it is like on your end and trying to like having a set time. But one thing that comes out that I see, and I think often, maybe sometimes, and viewers may not want to hear this, but sometimes in a toxic way, but I do think that there is this passion that, you develop when you are attached to a game, right? Like the players who buy your game, right, and are playing it, like you described in one of the interviews, how like when you were like playtesting pandemic and people were like jumping out of their seats, and like, I mean, that has to give you a good thrill on that end, right? That people are so passionate about your game that they want to make sure that it's perfect, right? Like they're like, oh, this little detail, right? So I mean, how does that make you feel?
No, of course I love it. I love when people tell me how they played a game and enjoyed it, right? I mean, on the other side, of course, people tell me they didn't like a game, and I go, that's fine. I can't, not every game is going to be pleasing to everybody. But yeah, of course, I get a joy when someone plays a game and says they had a great time, or, I've had people say, I've played with my grandmother, and I've had grandparents come to me and said, thank you for this game. I can play with my kids. So I love how I've helped, families get together, play together, enjoy time together. I mean, this is what the business is for me, just, bringing friends and family together to have fun. And so, yeah, it's an amazing thing. And lately, again, a lot of people, I guess because I wasn't really the face of Z-Man anymore, and even though I went to shows as WizKids, I seem to have been pushed sort of into the background. Like you said, people know my games, but they don't know me. So, but I've gotten a lot of people that said that like Pandemic is the game that got them into the hobby, for example. And lately, that's been a lot of talk where people have come up to me and said that, and I didn't expect it. And then there were people who came up to me to talk about certain things, and again, they didn't know who I was and how I was associated with any of the products or any of the games that they enjoyed. I was reminded of one person that I met. I met this person years ago. I saw them again at Dice Tower East, where I was a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking the story where we didn't introduce ourselves, or we said our names, and we played a game together. And this person wanted to record who they played with. So they said, hey, what's your BGG name? And I said, oh, it's Z-Man. And she went, oh, that's a name of the company. How do you have that name? And I go, well, that's me. And they went like, holy cow, what? So that was exciting. That was a lot of fun. And but I normally don't say, right? I don't go around saying, hey, I'm Zev from Z-Man. Let's play. I don't do it. If it comes up, great. If people ask me, I'll tell them. But I normally don't give that. I don't usually volunteer the information. And one other funny aspect was a few years ago, somebody wanted to play Long Shot. They were looking for players. They held up the box, and I hadn't played Long Shot in a while. And it was a game I published, but they had My Little Ponies instead of the horses. They had like My Little Pony figures there. So I said, hey, I'll sit down, I'll play. Sat down, they brought a bunch of friends, so there was about 5, 6, 7 of us. We're playing, she's teaching the game first, and I read, she came up to a rule, and the rule was incorrect. And I said, oh, no, this is what happens when a 0 is rolled, for example. And they're like, no, I don't think so. I go, check the rule book. And sure enough, I was right. And they were like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. We played the game, and then I left. So I didn't even say who I was, that I published Long Shot. That's how I knew the rule and all that. And I just left without it. I felt like the pale rider riding off into the sunset. This mysterious dude, this gamer, came in, played a game, did did a rule thing, and then rode off away to another game.
Have you thought about maybe making like going and saying, hey, we're going to re-release this game with My Little Pony on it?
If I ever had that license, that would be kind of
That,
interesting.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
In what you were looking at over that course of this period and how things have changed, what do you think? I mean, like, and look, I think that your opinion matters in this. I think that you've got the breadth and depth here to answer this question. You have the authority. I think maybe I should give that to you. What do you think tabletop games give people, what are players, right? That other forms of entertainment, movies, TV, right? Video games, right? Other forms of entertainment simply can't give them.
I would say, I mean, the economically, it's the repeated plays for the one-time purchase, right? That's a big thing. I mean, I guess you could say that of a DVD, for example, right? You buy a DVD once, you could see the movie multiple times, but I think it's different in that, yeah, you could see it multiple times, but many times you don't. Sure, you have a favorite movie, but usually you're sitting by yourself and then say, hey, do I want to see it? But with a board game, it invites more social activity. You're
Yeah.
hanging out with friends. You're talking about other things. You're talking about games. You're talking about life. You're even talking about what movies and video games you've played while you're playing. So I feel board games give a more, yeah, a more feeling of a closer social activity. Yeah, when you go to the movies, you might go with a friend or two, but you're sitting quiet usually, and then you're in a room with other people, but know them and so on. But I guess that's also like in a sporting event where you're in a stadium and yeah, you don't know everyone else. There's a camaraderie and stuff like that. And then, but I think it vanishes when you leave and stuff. But I think with the board game, right? People are hanging out. You're playing more board games, right? You're not playing one game and done. You got this game. Oh, we got another one. Then we got another one. So it becomes a whole evening thing usually, or a whole daily thing. So yeah, I just think it offers more opportunity to be with friends and just enjoy something together. I would say that's the thing. That's a big thing. And again, economically, buy a game once and you have it relatively forever. And it's also you can explore so many different themes in board games, which is very cool. And yeah, you have that in video and that, but it just seems more accessible. I mean, there's just so many like great things I think about it. And the travel, right? You could go to someone's house or go in your place and do it. So there's also that as well, right? You don't have to travel somewhere else and like a movie or something like that. Not that I'm decrying movies. I'm a movie buff. I love movies, but yeah, I think though. But I think that's where board games, I believe, are more superior to that entertainment. I think the social aspect of it is a big thing.
No, I actually agree. I think that was where I was feeling as well. Like for me, I'm also a huge movie buff. I mean, and listen, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Huge Star Wars fan, right? And a huge Star Trek fan. I love both, right? But if I watch episode 4, I can guarantee you, unless George Lucas has gone behind me again and tried to change something, it's the same movie, right? It's the same movie, right? But I take out Carcassonne and I put it on the table and I open it up to a new player, that experience is going to be completely brand new. And if we play it again the next day or a week or a year later, it's a whole different experience. It's not the same game, right? The rule sets are the same, but you really do get a different experience, right? And as players game, one of my favorite things about a game is when I'm playing it enough that we'll start to get into certain strategies, right? And then someone will change their strategy. They will change something, and it will like elevate the game to like the next level. And so, yeah, I think I'm never gonna get that right out of a movie or going to you talked about camaraderie, right? At a sporting event, yeah, but like I'm never going to see those people again. I'm never going to if I sat down next to them a year later, I'd never remember them, right? They would never, no one would remember them. But I've met people who I played a game with at Gen Con 3 years ago and then sat down with them at Origins and they're like, oh, hey man, you played that game with me, blah, blah, blah. I remember you did this thing. And like people remember, right? So, hey, that's something I think that's a unique gift.
Yeah, I tell stories. With gaming, I think there's also the you said camaraderie, and I think that's a good thing because I feel I could travel almost anywhere and find someone to connect with by playing games. You know what I mean? It's like I can go here and then I can meet another gamer or a group of gamers and join them and play and be one of them, and we speak the same language, and also since we're playing so different styles, a game that I may have played 100 times may be like, holy cow, I've never seen it played this way, kind of thing. So yeah, I'm with
Cross
you there.
pollination, right? Like cross pollination of like,
Yeah,
right. One of my favorite reasons to go play games at conventions is because they're not the same people who've been playing
right.
this. I mean, like playing the same game with me. You know, we have a weekly board game night with about 8 to 12 of us, and you know, we've played we play these games, and we're always bringing new games. But like, I can't tell you how many times where I went somewhere else and like somebody else had a completely different strategy, and I was like,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So yeah, no, I get that
I
for
learned that a
sure.
lot with CCGs, especially when I did Shadowfist. We had groups all over the world, but even in the United States, we had we had a Philly group, a San Francisco group, a Texas group, and they almost all had different playing styles. So when you joined their group, it's like, wow, what I never, I, who did that, or who uses those cards, or how did you? And that's why also playtesting was pretty difficult and different and rewarding. Is when those other groups playtested new cards, they found ways to play a card that that another group may not have done, and we're like, oh wow, okay. So it was always great data points there. But yeah, I agree. The fact that that you could play the same game that you've played all the time, and yet add a new element, even one new person, and all of a sudden it could be almost a totally different game. Yes, you're still doing the same things there, but the strategies and the attitudes and everything just makes it a little more different. And yeah, really very cool. But I enjoy that with the games. I'm not shy with playing with someone new. I'm willing to sit down and go, yeah, sure, let's do it. And 99% of the time it's a great experience. I don't know if I actually don't remember if I had a really bad experience. But I'll save the 1% in case. Yes, I mean I've been gaming for a long time, so yes, I'm sure that I had a bad experience. I mean, that's when playing with a new group kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah,
I think it's also part of your being an English major. You never say never, so that's I
yeah,
get that.
exactly, exactly. But I try to have
Right.
fun no matter what. I mean, whatever kind of game it is, I'm talking smack, or I'm just having fun, or making jokes, and I'm just whatever. I remember playing. I learned this new game, and it was like one of the most Euro type games that I played, and I was like, yeah, take that! I'm going on this island. I'm rowing. I'm doing, and I would just do silly stuff like that, and. I mean, maybe they wanted to kick me out after. I don't know, but they let me finish the game, so that was okay.
All right, man. We definitely and you're gonna be at Gen Con, right? So we
I will be
can.
at CheckCon. Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Booth
Okay.
1649.
1649. All right. And I asked because afterwards, after a night, you pick the night. Maybe we could sit down and play a game or something. I'd love to. You pick
Sure,
the
that's
game.
great. That time it's very hard, but usually in the evenings after dinner and stuff like that, I'm usually
Yeah.
hanging out around the open board gaming, or at least I walk through it and stuff. But yeah, absolutely. I'm open
Okay.
for as long as I'm walking around not doing anything. I'll sit down and play. I'll play most anything.
I'm there too. There's some kinds of games that are not my particular favorite. I think sometimes finding though a game that's within a genre that is so different that I want to play it, I think is something that I do get excited for. But yeah, you're right. There's certain types of games that aren't typically my favorite. Look, you've been doing this for 30 years, okay? And as one guy who's passed half a century to another, let me ask you, not from a business perspective, okay? Let's put that aside for a moment. What makes you, when you're looking at a game to publish, right? What makes you fall in love with the game?
It's too hard because it really is on a case by case basis, right? There's no formula that I look at or boxes that it or specific boxes that tick that say, yep, this is the game for me. It's really a feeling of playing it and saying, wow, this is just something different. It's an experience that took me somewhere else. But if I had to when I tell designers who want to pitch me, I always say unique, fun, and engaging. I know a lot of other publishers at least do the unique and fun. I don't know if they all say engaging. So I use engaging in my thing. And when I say engaging, it means usually a game that keeps you involved even when it's not your turn. So you don't just say, hey, I'm going to check my Facebook, tell me when it's my turn kind of thing. I
Right.
want people always involved. So that usually means simultaneous play is a big thing that helps that engagement. Things that you could do off turn, when it's not your turn. Like Soothsayers, for example, that's a game that you need to pay attention because even when it's not your turn, You have the opportunity to do stuff with simultaneous play, a game like Lynx that I have, LYNX, and simultaneous play. So it's something that just keeps the interest going. And then again, just something that's different. I try not to do stuff that's been done before. Unfortunately, I mean, that's what happens. Like when a trend becomes popular, I all of a sudden get a lot of pitches saying, hey, this trend's popular, so here's a game in that trend. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like following trends. I want to start a trend. I don't want to follow a trend. And if I'm going to follow a trend, it better be really good and way better than the thing that started the trend, which is usually still hard to do. But, that's what I look for. Like, for example, I didn't do a roll and write. I did a simple one at WizKid. I did one with Z-Man because I don't think there was a roll and write back then when I did Z-Man, or they were just starting. And I don't think I don't think I did one. So I did a small one at WizKids right in the beginning of my tenure because we were looking to get games done, and this was an opportunity to network with a foreign publisher. I did their English language thing, so I didn't do any other until I did Super Skill Pinball. To me, that's the epitome of roll and write. When people pitch me a roll and write, I said, if you can't beat Super Skill Pinball in my eyes, I'm just not interested. So that's the thing. It's like I felt I did the best I could in that genre. Sure, that might be a little arrogant of me, but it's like that was my thing. I did, I put everything into that game. It does everything I want in the game. How are you going to beat that? Why do another one? Right, kind of thing. Now, I don't have one for Play to Z, so would I do one just to have one in my catalog? Possibly, but again, it's got to be really, really, really good, really on par with Super Skill Pinball or better for me to say, yeah, this is worth publishing. If this was 20, 25 years ago when there weren't as many games being published a year, I'd probably be a little more lenient in looking at something. But in this day and age, when there are way more games being published, it's really got to surpass my goals there on what I'm looking for. So, and again, a lot of it is gut feeling. Play the game and go, yeah, this is something special to me, right? Hopefully it's special to others, but it's got to be special to me first for the most part. And
That's
then
what I
there's a
wanted.
tiny small percentage I would do a game because of, if it was a license or if it was by a hot designer, a well-regarded designer, that sort of thing, where I would say, okay, maybe I'll do that because that will give me traction, get the name out there, and so on. I don't try to do that often. And again, it has to be really, really a good reason, right? Like this person would have to be really well known, or this IP, intellectual property, has to be, yeah, this is something that can move us forward or whatnot. Even if the game is not amazing or ticks off, is the unique, fun, and engaging kind of thing, I would probably do it for business reasons rather than artistic reasons.
Sure, sure.
But I say you figure, I mean, I am running a business, so I'll say I'm 99% artistic, maybe 1% business. If something hits the business end of it, I go, yeah, I'll give this a shot because it's business and I can maybe do, I can do well with it, and it can raise my company's it raise my company's esteem and knowledge in people's minds, right? Because that's a lot of things we're fighting for. We're fighting for recognition, especially with a lot of other games out there. It's hard to get a game that gets recognized and so on. So, you have to really look for what can do that.
You brought something up there that I actually want to ask you about. I hadn't thought about asking you, but now I do. Is there an IP that, without breaking any secrets here, is there an IP that you've always wanted to work on or work with that you haven't gotten to do? People are listening, Zev.
Not hankering for any. It's one of those things. If the opportunity comes to me, then and that's the thing, right? I'm open to opportunities, which is great. If someone says, "Hey, we got this lead on this," I go, "Ooh, that's something that's interesting." Now, having said that, we were announced that we are doing a Middle Earth themed game. So which is amazing, right? So we're very excited for it. I am looking forward to it. I do love Middle Earth. I'm a fan of that. So that I'm very, very excited about. So yeah, that's great. That's all I can say on that, unfortunately.
Okay. Is that a 27 release?
To divulge and stuff like that, but it's just that we are doing a Middle Earth themed game. Probably it won't be out till 2028, although there might be something in 2027 that you will see about it. But in terms of an IP otherwise that I really, really want, I honestly don't think there is that I'm hankering to do offhand. It's mostly when it comes to me and then I make a decision then saying, yes, that's an IP that I do want to work with. Now, when I worked for WizKids, we did a lot of IP games because WizKids had a lot of IPs. We did Star Trek games, we did Dungeons and Dragon games,
Wow.
we did Marvel and DC games. Heck, we did a Mariah Carey game. We did some Warner Brothers, other Warner Brother games, like in Super Skill Pinball. We had the Christmas edition, and we had 3 pinballs, which was like it was a Elf, Christmas Story, and National Lampoon's Vacation. Right. So again, those opportunities were given to me, and they said, "Hey, we have this license. Let's do a game or something like that." So I just ran with it because I was, I had to do that. But would any of those be anything I particularly sought? I'm not sure. It depends. A lot of them, they have so many games in there. That's the other thing. It's like, yeah, I like Star Trek, I like Marvel and all that, but it's like, what would I do different? You know what I mean? Like, what could I add? I don't know, right? I don't want to just. I'd rather not just slap a game theme on something that I have already, which you could do and is great. But I'd love to offer something more to it. Make it different, make it more thematic to go in with the IP. But I don't know. I just don't, it's just hard to do. So that's why I don't say, yeah, I want this IP because I think I have a game that's great for it, kind of thing.
Okay. What are you hoping Play to Z tells people? What do you think? What makes Play to Z unique in this space? But also, what kind of a story are you wanting to tell with this company and the games that you've selected?
I would say that Play to Z strives to do games that we feel should be in the marketplace and should be on your shelf. I'm using the same philosophy I did at Z-Man Games, same philosophy I had at WizKids. I'm trying to give you the best games possible, the games that I feel are really good. They have something special, something, interesting and cool and unique about it and fun about it that I think you will all enjoy with you, your family, your friends, and so on. And also that Play to Z is not afraid to take risks. Like, we'll do a game that, probably, may not have been done by others because it might have been too risky. Pandemic, for example, right? At the time, no one did really a full co-op back then. You had a couple of cooperative games, usually with a trader element. I believe there was one other fully cooperative game, which was Middle Earth themed. I believe The Hobbit, one of the Hobbit type games. But it was one of those things where people were trying to talk me out of doing Pandemic. They said, don't do full cooperative. There are none in the marketplace. Why are there none? Because nobody wants them. And it's like, oh, that's not true. Maybe nobody has
Maybe
them
nobody
because
has
nobody made one.
Right.
I look at it that way, right? I like to say there's a whole business term that I learned a long, long time ago, and I like using it. I like to swim in a blue ocean, and a lot of people may not understand. So yeah, red ocean or blue ocean. The red ocean is full of sharks. It's bloodied and frenzied and stuff like that, and everybody's going there, and they're all fighting for the meals. I want to be the fish or the person in the blue ocean where nobody's gone there really before, and I'm out there myself hoping that it will attract people there because it's nice, quiet, different, and so on. Now, sometimes I put out a game in a blue ocean, and I'm the only one swimming there. Nobody likes it. It's like, oh well, I tried. I can't win them all, unfortunately. But that's also what I look for. So the games that I present to people, I just feel so different, so fun. I love when people call my games unique, and because then I feel I've done what I set out to do. And that happened with Z-Man, it happened with WizKids, and even with Play to Z, people say this is just unique, the game is unique, it's different. I've never played this type of game like this before. And I try to do that as much as possible. Obviously, it's impossible to do it 100% of the time, to find that kind of game, curate it, play test, polish it, develop it, and so on, and get to that point. But I try as much as possible. So when I say yes to a game, it's because I think it already has a lot of those elements, and I try to push it as far as possible before I say, okay, hey, this is ready for publication, and fingers crossed, hope people like it.
So you gave me the perfect transition there, Zev. So
Oh, sure.
as you and I played the good start of Siege Perilous yesterday, and I think it's unique. I did. I sat here. I was showing it to friends of mine last night. I'm like, look at this. Look how this is working together, right? The combination of it's look, I don't know that there's any one thing that's absolutely unique, but I do think that the soup that you have made in this, right, that is a very unique tasting soup, and I really liked it. I got excited about it. I was excited about the game yesterday, and I think that says quite a bit about it. What was it about you? What moment in the project did you go, "Oh, this is when we have to publish. I have to have it."
So it was a friend of mine a designer, Andrew Parks, who I published a bunch of his games, who's also an Arthurian scholar, so to speak. He introduced me to the designer of Siege Perilous. He felt that I would be the right publisher for this game. At the time, it's gone through many iterations already, and even before I got involved, many iterations before that. The designer diary, I think he put up 2 diaries so far, and you could see some of how it changed. I fell in love with it because, so I love Arthurian lore, so that was a big thing for me. I love that. I did, at WizKids, I did Tales of the Arthurian Knights, so I love Arthurian lore, and I felt that this was so different because it's not a paragraph-driven game, it is a board game. And the stories are there, but they're on the quest cards, mainly, they're on the items, they're on some of the other cards as well, the Forest Sauvage cards. I just love how it tackled the lore. I love the idea of how you play the game. Moving around a map, sure, people do that, but I love that there are buildings in the kingdoms on the map, and you can interact with the buildings there. So you don't just say, I'm in this kingdom and I do the action of the kingdom. You choose what buildings you want to work with in that kingdom, right? And each kingdom, they have different variety of buildings and they do different things. It did come already with the art. The designer had already commissioned the original hand-painted medieval style arts. And when he told me that story, where not only is it medieval style, original, it's the artist is known for medieval style artwork and uses medieval style techniques and pigments and materials for it. So that whole thing just added to it. Now, again, at WizKids, I did a trick-taking game called Tournament at Camelot, and we used a lot of public domain, illuminated type medieval style artwork. And it was great. And it's a great game, a lot of fun and everything. But this was original, right? This artist drew all new, medieval looking stuff. Right? Like, so if I didn't say this, people would go, wow, where'd you get these, from what, 1400s, 1500s? I was like, no, this was done in 2020, 3, 4, and 5, 6. So I love that. I mean, it came with the art, which was a bonus. Very nice. And yeah, it was just a great game. But it was a game that I helped play test a lot. I made a lot of suggestions, and I think I had a hand in the final, or at least the near final of where we are right now of the game. So yeah, it just hit that it was right, like it's engaging in that I am interested in what other people are doing and stuff. But right, it's a game where a person could take a longer term, and I can just watch or do other things. So right, it didn't hit my full-on engaging kind of thing where I must stare all the time and know what you're doing. It's okay, but it was overshadowed by all the other great stuff about it that I said, yeah, this was really cool. And I love that you're meeting knights, you're meeting courtiers, Merlin shows up, you go on foreign campaigns, we have story cards and full stories that you could play. The magic kind of the Forest Sauvage, where you meet the Fae and you don't know what's gonna happen. It might be a task, it might be a quest, it might be an item, that you have to get. I mean, it's just the surprises. I think that's the thing where, and maybe that does keep you engaged, because when someone says, okay, I'm going to the Forest Sauvage, I too want to see what you meet. So
Right.
there is some engagement there, in that way. But yeah, and then in fact you have virtues and skills. So I love the 2 tracks that you have, where you have 4 virtues, 4 skills, and they each apply in different ways, and they affect the map, and they affect the things that you do, and you can increase them. Yeah, it's just like so much cool stuff that's going on there, and so many ways in a way to play it, right? Because you could set up like we played a short game, 9 rounds, and we had 2 foreign campaigns and a Merlin and 1 story card. But I could have 3 foreign campaigns, 2 Merlins, and no story cards, or 4 story cards. I mean, there's so many things that you can do, even in the short game, and of course in the long game, even more things. So I like the fact that there's no set way to play. You could set it up how and what's going to appear throughout the game while doing it. Plus, you still have all the interesting stuff on the board itself. So it's one of those things where, yeah, you have all this cool stuff on the board, and it's like, oh, but now we're all adding these extra interesting elements that we don't know what it's going to be like, what foreign campaign is going to be, what is Merlin going to show up with, again, what the Forest Sauvage. So there's what story element's going to be there. I think all that just adds to the funness, the replayability of it. And, talking about not playing the same game twice. Yeah, you're not really going to because of all these things that you can add to it. So, yeah, it was just so many different factors that I finally said, yeah, this is a game that I want to do. And, yeah, as soon as I looked at it, I said, all right, I'm interested. Let's go for it. Yeah.
Just a tie-in here, but so I'm sitting here thinking, listening to you talk about all these different options, right? And you know what it made me think of? Careers. It made me think, right? It made me think, because in careers, one of the things I liked about the game, I didn't want to tell you that, but I liked the game too. One of the things I liked about the game that made it unique was that you defined what winning meant to you, right? I think, and I think that's also, if you want to weave it into there, I'll try to thread the needle here. But if you look at like Shadowfist, right? You look at card games like that. One of the things about it is that you bring your deck, right? You bring what you're going to have at the game, right? Like I got back into Magic, by the way, also in '94, right? But my first set was a dark set, right? But like you think about it, your deck is yours, right? It's your defining your play, what you want to bring, unless you're blue, and then I'm just going to kick you out. But I think that's what I really liked about the game yesterday, was that it did have so much, and I couldn't do everything, right? If when we had a story come out, it was only going to be for right now, and you had to make a choice, right? And then you have some other elements that we had 4 rounds, and you had 4 turns, not rounds, they're turns. You had 4 turns before you had to make a choice. So and what you were going to do. So I have this this character. This is what I'm going to do, and I have this strategy, and then these things would pop out, and you're like, oh my God, do I run off to do those things, or do I stick to my strategy, right? I really liked that about the game. It made it so that there was that. I'll be upfront, I'm not normally a dice person. I'm not, as you saw yesterday, I am not the greatest roller. Some people aren't, but I really like the fact that there was mechanisms that you could prepare for ahead of time to really help make sure that the dice were where you wanted them to be. I really thought I do think you have something special. You said you helped during the development. What happened during development where everything clicked for you and you're like, okay, now I want it? Was there something that happened in the development that you're like, oh, this is it?
So, like I said, I liked it when I saw it, right? But I gave my feedback, and then they would invite me to play again after they made changes. But I will say, they made changes way even beyond what I asked for. They started doing this. But I accepted it. I was like, okay, it works. It's great. Or I would give a little more feedback on some other things. So I helped mold a few little things here and there. But there were times when, all right, I'm playing this game. It's like, whoa, you completely changed how this works and that works. I'm like, okay, now I got to relearn this thing. I was happy with it with many iterations, with a few changes. But then they made better changes, and I went, oh, yeah, that's really cool. That's more streamlined. And actually, I think in the end, I got to the point where it's like, okay, this is much more streamlined. It's a long game, right? I'm upfront. It's 90 minutes to 2 hours at least if you play in real time. But I think when I got onto it, it was 3 hours, right? When I was first shown it, it was at least 3.5 hours. But I loved it. I'm not afraid of long games, as long as I'm enjoying myself, and I was totally enjoying myself. But I will say again, all my tests at the time were on Tabletop Simulator, which usually they say add time and a half, double time for a play game because of all, you got to move your mouse, you got to grab stuff, it's a lot slower than in physical time there. But I have played several games physically with the prototype that we made. And yeah, I would say about 2 hours is probably a good time. If you have 4 people, maybe it's a little more than that. But again, I find it enjoying. So yeah, there was just a point where I was like, yeah, you know what? This is hitting. It's streamlined. It's really working. We got rid of many other singular rules that were cool, but we realized they were not needed, right? Or we truncated them and we had one thing do that other thing, and now we added it to that, and that makes sense, kind of stuff, So it was, once I learned all those things and we got to new thing, it was, and then I saw the changes in that. yeah, it was like at a point where it's like, okay, I'm ready. And even then, we've been doing small tweaks. And I think even now, after some feedback of physical playing, we did even a couple more tweaks. And we might actually add like a difficult mode where it'll be the dice mitigation will be a little harder, but we'll see. But again, we streamlined the process. We took out this other rule and we folded it into one of the components in the game. There's blessing, which we had talked about. Blessings do that can raise the stats, the value of a die roll. That's how you can, one of the ways to help mitigate a die thing. But at one point we had where a higher value can be used as a lower value. And I think in the main game, yes, we still might keep that. But in the hard mode, no, you have to use your blessings. So we're still tweaking some stuff there. But again, I would say it's probably about 98% done. We still might tweak a little bit here and there. And it's just amazing at how it changed. And again, how I liked it back then, liking it more. And as it got more duration, I go, yep, I like it. But I probably would have done it, back over here when it was this iteration. I probably would have been okay with it. But I'm loving it that it's this iteration, and I go, yeah, okay, this is the perfect way to do it.
Do you, by the way, I was really, one of the things that I said to my partner after we got off yesterday talking about the game, and I said, I don't know if it's just because he's the publisher or because, he just has that kind of memory, but you knew everything about the game. Like you knew every single thing about the game. Do you find like, is that this game or is it like, that's, if I could pull anything off, if I went and grabbed any game of yours off the shelf, like, tell me about this. Can you walk me through? Could you do that with any of your games?
I would probably do it to, I know I've been using a lot of percentages lately. I would say I could probably play, without looking at the rule book, I would say probably 90 to 95% of my games. And then the other 5%, I probably have to look up a couple of, like, what's the hand size? That's one I think always gets people, especially when I played so many card games. Sometimes you have 5, sometimes 6, 7, 10. So remembering the hand size at times or the beginning setup, making sure everybody has the right thing. I would have to look at a rule book a little bit of that. But in terms of playing the game, yeah, I would probably remember about 95% of the games that at least I've published.
Do you think other small publishers are the same way? Do you think they also, or is that just something unique to you, Zev?
That I can't answer. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll say maybe it's unique to me because I've published about 400 games and I know the rules to most of those games, right? So if a small publisher says, yeah, I have 4 games, I would hope they would remember how to play those 4 games, right?
All right. Think about that's 360 games that you're saying.
It's not a bad thing if you don't. It's like, yeah, I need the rules. Okay, sure, no problem. We'll do it. But yeah, if I had 4 games, I would remember. But yeah, with 400, sure. And some of the heavier games, am I going to know every aspect of some of the bigger games that I haven't played in years? Probably I would have to look into a rule book. But if it was a card game or some of my smaller games in that, I'm probably at a higher percentage of just knowing how to play it and so on. And then it just becomes towards the medium and heavier games where it's like, all right, I just, I don't remember this particular rule or that particular rule. But I go through it fast, meaning like I don't have to read the whole rule book to relearn the game sort of thing, right? It just pick and choose. Okay, again, what hand size you start with or what resources you start with. Okay, yeah, this icon, I think it means this. Let me just check. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. So the rules I would use to just bolster my knowledge and bump my memory on a few things. But I don't think there's a game where I have to say, all right, I have to start from scratch and look through it. At least I don't think so. I don't know. I mean,
That's
again,
amazing.
Something in that collection that goes, oops.
Because we probably play, at our table, we probably play about 50 to 100 games, on our Thursday night, different games, right? A year. And some nights it's like, we'll like last night, we had like 2 or 3 small games that we were playing around. And then after we got that done, then we got into the main game. And then, we typically are playing some we like to play a lot of those mid to heavier Euros, right? But then sometimes we'll like pull something out lighter, right? And we'll, but still going to take us at least a couple hours, right? We don't mind. We do a lot of talking around the table. But I noticed that like if I haven't played a game in a year, like we just put a game up last night and we hadn't played it in a year, and I'm like, man, I really need to remember these rules better, And I remember the mechanics, right? Like how it worked because I always remember I like the lore. That's a big thing for me is the game needs to connect with thematics. But yeah, so I think that's amazing that you have that kind of memory. That's awesome.
I will say probably what helps is when I do a game, and again, there are exceptions, I'm at least reading and proofing and editing the rule book multiple times. That probably is what gets it stuck up there because it's not like, it's not like I just, hey, here, I just published this game and, whatever. I've looked at that rule book multiple times. So a lot of that stuff becomes, I guess, ingrained. But I will say there are games where people take, like for example, Siege doesn't really have a rule book. It was always just taught to me, so I just learned it by rote, and I remembered all the stuff because of how many times I've played it and learned it. But for the most part, it's I think because I've looked over each rule book for each game at least one time, sometimes more, and I just happen to recall the information there. And then there's also the game language, right? Where I've seen so many icons and stuff. So like a lot of times when someone teaches me a game and I see an icon, I go, oh, that means discard. Oh, that means draw. Oh, that means, and I go, oh yeah. I go, well, yeah, because we have sort of a universal language
Language,
for
right?
gamers,
Yeah.
right? So, and that helps too, right? So that makes me understand something. Oh yeah, okay. So now I know. Okay, so you play this card and it means to discard this and that. And sometimes I get a shocked look. They go, "Wow, how'd you know?" And I go, "Well, I mean, I can read the iconography is pretty clear. Using a lot of the same iconography or similar that is found in so many other games that I'm able to read that." So, it's very rare to find something where it's like, unless it's specific to the game, I go, "What's this icon mean?" Usually, they have certain meanings, or I get close to it. Like if they show a hand, right, I might say draw, but it might mean something. Well, it's something in your hand or something you take or give. I go, okay, yeah, there's that. But yeah, so that helps me too. That helps me do it.
So, man, thank you. I appreciate for giving me the insight. All right, so I know we're getting towards the end. I did have a few questions I want to
Sure.
ask you more a little personal level here. 20 years from now, what do you hope people remember about Zev?
I don't know. I was a nice guy.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm open. I'm helpful. I mean, people, ask me for advice and feedback and stuff, and I try to be helpful. I try to be open to people, right? I don't turn people away. I mean, I guess that's it. That I was just, I if I want, so business wise, I was a guy that tried to bring joy. Maybe that just sounds too
No, go ahead,
silly.
man. It's all right to say
I,
that.
I tried to bring joy to people. That's it. I made games to make people, happy and be with their friends and be with their family. And I was just trying to make people have fun, no matter what kind of game, that at least they enjoyed something, right? They took some time out of their time to play something that I did and they had a great time with it. And maybe they talked about it afterwards and it really left an impression. I would love that. I want people to know that, I did good games.
Well, Zeb, let me tell you a little story then. I'll give you just to give it to you. I might cut this out. I don't know. We'll see. Uh, I had a friend of mine who I used to LARP with. I used to be in Vampire LARP, and we did it for a long time together. And him and his at time fiance moved into a house in Pennsylvania, which was about 2.5 hours from here. And I went to their party they had, and it was a gorgeous house outside and real rural, and they had a lot of stuff, and I played a number of different kinds of like games that they had, and then the next morning he wakes me up and he says, "Hey man, I want you to come downstairs. We're gonna play a game." And I'm like, "Okay, what are you gonna play?" And he says, "Don't, I'm gonna show it to you. It's a French game." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he sits me down with his fiance. By the way, they're married. He's a judge now. She's like, I mean, she's like all the nurse and everything. So like really nice people, right? And he teaches me Carcassonne, right? And I remember going home and going, I got to get this game. And then I'm like, well, where do I find it? And so I go to the gaming store, right? And because I remember where they were, and I went in there and walked in, and this was like 2012, by the way. This was not like 30 years ago. It was 2012, right? And so the game had already been out for a long time. It was an old box too, right? You can tell. And I went and found a copy, bought it at the store, and I went home and I'm like, I called up some of my friends, like, hey, I want to teach you this game. So we sit down and teach the game, and they're like, oh. Is this your first one? And they're like, yeah. They're like, oh, well, man, we got to get you. Look, we got this game and this game and this game, and and then about 3 years later, another buddy of mine, he's like, oh, you like these games, huh? Okay, well, well, let me teach you Euros, right? And then so I got into the Euros, right? And so I want you to know, man, like your game brought me into this hobby. So I'm going to send you the bill for all these games. So no, I'm kidding. But no, for serious, I wanted you to know that like that was the game that kind of really hit it off for me. I too I played D&D when I was a kid. I was the old forever DM because nobody else wanted to do it. So I totally get. I very similar stories. For me, The Hobbit and the trilogy are sacrosanct in our house. So I absolutely love those books. So yeah, I just wanted to give that story to you. That which leads me to my probably my last question. Is there a story we didn't ask you about today that you'd really like people to hear? The floor is yours. Is there a Zev story that you feel is quintessential to the story we've been talking about that you'd love people to hear?
I don't know, honestly. I don't. Yeah, because I pretty much said, how I feel and my philosophy on games and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, to say that, I mean, maybe to show off that it's how I was nice. I remember being at Origins and a customer started yelling at me about a game that they said it didn't have this or he was talking about like missing pieces or broken pieces and he was just going on and then he mentioned the piece and then I realized none of my games have that.
Oh,
And I said, sir, I understand your frustration, but this is the game you're talking about. Because I actually, when he said the piece, I even knew where it came from. I said, I didn't publish that game. If you still need to yell, the publisher's over there. It's this game, and this is the name of the game, and that's the publisher. And the guy just looked at, he just like walked away, head down, and like that. And then I just kept going. I just kept on with my business. I was at Origins. I was like, all right, next. All right, what's going on like that? Maybe that's it. I don't know. Just to, it's like, I love meeting people face to face. And yeah, even if you have a bad thing to say, I'll listen to it. If it's something I can correct, I'll try, I'll strive for it. But again, nothing I do is out of malicious. I'm not trying to, soak people for money. I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to do good games and continue doing that. And I need everyone's support to do that. Right? If my games don't sell, then I'm not in business. I can't make games anymore. So obviously, I'm trying to make good games to make people buy them so I can make more. I guess that was it. I mean, there might be more. I don't know what other
maybe
Zev
maybe
story.
that's where our part two comes in, man. Maybe we come back to this a year from now, and you and I
Maybe.
sit down and catch up.
I mean, I go to a lot of conventions. I mean, people. I've traveled to a lot of places. I've been to conventions people were shocked to see me at. I've done small shows. I've done international shows. That I've been around and I've been to a lot of stores as well, and I've done demos and visited stores. But I don't know if there's just a ubiquitous Zev story otherwise that would say that. I think that I'm just open, to things. I've had a lot of people, come up to me and just, ask me things and advice. I just had a designer at Origin saying new time designer. She just wanted information and she just had this questionnaire, and I said, sure. We had to stop when I had to make a sale or something, or a person asked a question, but I took the time and gave them what information I knew, and it was like, hey, good luck, and that's it. So just that, I guess. I don't know if
Thank you
that's
so
something,
much,
if that's
Zev.
enough.
That's great, man. Zev, thank you so much for being here on our Creator Spotlight, and I want to tell you thank you so much for this. This has really been a great time, and we will definitely be following this up. I want you all to know that Zev was nice enough to get me the prototype to play this game, and so I'm definitely going to be down to doing that here. I also got the TTS, so I'm super excited to play with a couple friends of mine online, and show them this game. I definitely think this is. I think you got a great game. I'm definitely ordering it on the Kickstarter myself, so for sure.
Yeah,
So,
so yeah, let people know it's on GameFound through the
oh,
17th.
Kim Game Founts, all right,
So it's on
correct.
GameFound through the 17th. You can check it out. There's videos on how to play, so there's tutorials you could download and watch and so on and so forth. So yeah, check. That's what I'll say. I'll do the business thing and say, hey, please check it out. You don't have to back if you don't want, but at least check it out and see if it's a game for you.
I think this is one of those games. I will say that even if the theme isn't your typical, right? I think this has such a good, like, great mesh of the uniqueness that I do think this is a game that's going to go beyond the actual theme. But and it is the, by the way, that's the other thing. I love the fact that you connected the theme so well to the mechanics. I was actually going to ask you, maybe I'll ask one more question. Like, did they? Is this one of those? I can't tell you how many times I talked to a designer and somebody's like, "Well, we started off with the mechanics and we did this and this because I wanted to do this mechanic, and then we like slapped the theme onto it." Did they start with the Arthurian and then move like they did, right? Like that's
They
I
started
think
with
that's
Arthurian.
a good indication.
But if you read the dev diary, the guy, so this guy never played board games. And when I say never, sure, maybe he did Monopoly or whatever, but he didn't play modern board games. He had just actually did the Monty Python role playing game, which did very well and so on. So he's more of an RPG or a story guy and so on. But he loves Arthurian lore, and he came up with this game. But if you read the dev diary, I think it played more like a story driven ish type game, right? It was like less a board game, more something else. And he realized it was just a beast and there was just so many things and so on. And then he got a developer to help him clamp down and restrict it and make it into a board game. And the developer did so much work, Ivan, he did so much work that he actually became a co-designer now. So Brian and Ivan are co-designers of this game. But yeah, this all pertained to the theme. It all pertained to the lore. Brian hired the artist to immerse further into the theme as well. So yeah, it's all because of that. And sure, with Arthur, obviously, right, quest is a known thing. Any Arthurian game usually has some sort of quest kind of thing. So there is that, but it's just done so differently in the board game. Again, how you interact with buildings, raising your virtues and that. So there's a little character creation development going in there, if you'll see. So it might hit the video game kind of people or the RPG people where you are building your character any way you want, right? It's like, hey, I want to have more courage. I'm going to go to the church that gives me courage upgrades, right? If I want to be more in combat, I go to the training tower and up my combat. And that's the thing, right? You can choose what you want. Obviously, you have a limited time frame within the round to do it, within how many rounds we're playing. So you just have to be, okay, what do I want to accomplish? Because I need to get VPs, all right? It's all about VPs at the end. What do I want to accomplish within the time frame? But you can pretty much go your own way, forge your own path, so to speak, on how you get there. So I love that it has that sort of story and character building element to it within the board game, and yet it still feels so much like a board game along with it. So yeah.
Well, Zep, thank you so much, man.
Hey, thanks for
I
having me. That's
love
great.
doing this. We definitely got to do this again in the future. And I thank everybody for watching us. And we'll see each other again soon, Sev. Talk to you later.
Fantastic.